One of the things we brought in at SIM was 5 working groups. And one of the working groups, which Lisa has been incredibly ably leading, working closely in partnership with Colleen, and I'm pleased to say the research lead of lots of the other major studio businesses, has been a piece looking at content research, the case for content measurement specifically. And we're here today to talk about some of the work we've been doing, why it matters, and what we think it means for the industry. So let's dive straight in. I can do this. So first of all, we're going to do mics. We'll do that. So Lisa, first of all, tell us a bit about what we're talking about when we talk about content measurement and what we've been doing in this working group.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Is this working? Okay.
Yep.
So I've been very fortunate in my career to have gone back and forth between sort of the sales side and the content side. And I think one thing that continues to surprise me after all these years, I know I look young, but after all these years, is just there's so much focus on the ad side, and there just is not enough understanding on the content side. And I know from, getting to meet folks like Colleen and Kavita and folks and Andrea from Warner Brothers, that we all share sort of this knowledge that there's a lack of awareness here, and we talk about it, and we're just not getting very far. And so part of what we really decided we needed to do as a group was to better define it for all of you, whether you are and a measurement vendor, whether you are in sort of the sales side of things and wanting to make a connection. And so John and Sim were gracious enough. There's a ton of organizations that have an A in them. We could rattle off a bunch of them. There isn't really a home for content. And so I think Sim has been a great place for us to do that. And it's been great to sort of pull together. Our working group kind of has a smaller core part to it that is sort of the publisher platform side. But we have also included others in a larger working group. And so, when we think about this, I was saying I wish that we'd been better with the graphics, because I think it would be good if we could represent this as a funnel. We talk a lot about the bottom part of the funnel, which is the sales funnel, right? Where should you insert your ad exposure? And then how do you make that be as effective as possible, leading to an outcome such as a purchase? But no one maybe except for the Super Bowl, nobody tunes in to watch commercials. They tune in to watch really great content, and they stay for engaging ads. There is an entire other funnel above the ad funnel that is, what content should we develop? Where should we put it? How should we release it? And it really embraces the point of view of the viewer, right? Our program executives, they are very much trying to put themselves in the mind of the viewer. How do you get their attention to a show? How do you keep their attention to a show?
Awesome. That's clear. So the second thing we spent time thinking about is really business needs. What kinds of use cases are you trying to support internally within your organizations? And Colleen, I know this is something you've been thinking long and hard about.
I mean, there's so many, and I think that all of these efforts have started with ad measurement because that's how we monetize the content. And I think it is the right place to start, and we fully support that. And I think that we're just trying to raise awareness to it and work with the vendors closely to establish some more bandwidth to be able to address a whole host of other stakeholders that research and analytics teams also work with, like the people that make the shows, like the people that market the shows or schedule them, or are trying to figure out how to optimize on-air promo inventory so that we're showing ads to the right people so they'll watch another show. So on the left-hand side, we're constantly evaluating what is our content slate, what's working, what's not, how is it doing compared to the competition. And we only know those things because we have content measurement. If we only had ad campaign measurement, we wouldn't know how the content is doing. We wouldn't know the audiences of that content and how it differs from night to night or day of the week. What was the term that guy that was just up here used? Yes. There's so much that we use the content measurement to work with to run the business outside of ad sales teams.
One of the key things you said there, which to me is really important, is that you obviously have from your own streaming services, for example, pretty good visibility of who's consuming what from a subscriber basis, but that's not enough. You need to see the whole market, right?
Right. And on the linear side, for obviously a long time, we've had it's syndicated measurement, and you've seen how everybody does. Everybody sees how everybody does. And, that's not the case with campaign measurement, and still isn't. And I think that when it comes to the streaming space, we have perfect information about our own platforms, but it is helpful to be able to see, especially, we do a lot of licensing, a lot of really interesting carve-out windows as vehicles of marketing. And, those are all really important use cases that also represent revenue, as well as just optimizing the business.
So those are not the only use cases. Lisa, we have some others. Talk us through these needs.
Sure. I'm just going to piggyback. We don't have to go back, but just in what Colleen was saying is that I think a lot of the use cases we were talking about really do require us to follow a viewer from the point of view of when did they get exposed to a show, which is not dissimilar to being exposed to a product or an ad. But then how do we get them to go sample? And then how do we get them to keep viewing? And should it be something that drops in a binge type situation? Should it be once a week? And that requires ultimately a different kind of measurement. It goes well beyond just adding up content impressions like you might add up ad impressions. And I think that's been a big misnomer about what is content measurement. But we also have external partners. We produce the FBI shows that air on CBS, right? Like, we don't just sell to ourselves. Sometimes that's not the right thing. We need to look at what our studios are developing and find the right home. Sometimes that right home is on ourselves. Sometimes that right home is on someone else for a little bit, and maybe it comes back home. But we have to, consider all of the different people in that chain. And to piggyback off something that Colleen was talking about, we do have really great data about the people that are watching inside our streaming platforms. But we have to be able to contextualize that. And also think about it. If we're going to acquire a show, it's not all originals. That'd be even more expensive than everything. We have to be able to acquire programs. Well, how will we know if we're acquiring the right kind of programs for our goals? Our goals might be we want to acquire programs that attract a similar audience to some of the things we already have there. So when they come in, they have more things to watch. We may be trying to expand our reach and be able to bring in a different kind of audience. So when you're talking about content that already exists, we need to be able to connect that back to the viewers that are watching our platforms, which is something that goes beyond first-party data alone. So it is sort of the mix of those two. And again, if we think about content, it's not just the tune-in. If you think about the subscription services, I'm pretty sure that if you're choosing Peacock or Paramount or whatever, it's not just because of the price and the name of the product. Like, you're going there because there are programs that you feel passionate about, that you want to be able to see, that you're willing to either, pay the dollars in the subscription cost and or your time and attention for ads.
And briefly on these two, give us a sense of just roughly what's involved in each of these two buckets.
Yeah, so I think a little bit what I was talking about was some of the other people that are in the ecosystem, right? That we have to have some way to contextualize that and not just, here's a number. How does that number sort of fit into the larger marketplace? It isn't just adding up a total. There can be other types of metrics, engagement, how frequently somebody is coming to the platform based on that content. We also have to manage a public story, right? So it's easier to tell that story if it's a combination of data we have from ourselves, but also putting that into the larger landscape. Rankers maybe have a little less importance, but they're still important, right? They still give us a sense of what that content is that's in demand. I forget the analogy or the study that was done in the previous session. It doesn't surprise me at all that Friends would still have a very effective sort of place for advertising. It's a good show. It was a Warner Brothers produced show that aired on NBC, but it's a good show. It's still a good show just because it's a repeat. In fact, to the people watching it, it just might be new.
So those are some of the use cases we're talking about. Let's dive on and talk about why solving those use cases and delivering what you need is so hard. There are a couple of issues that we've been discussing in the working group. Do you want to just talk us through them? Colleen, do you want to dive in?
Sure. I like I said before, I think that a lot of the past couple of years of efforts have been very focused on measuring ads, measuring ad campaigns, cross-platform ad campaigns. And I think that was the easiest and best place to start. And I agree that it was the number one priority and have been working hard to support that as well. And we're just trying to open the aperture and create some space with the vendor community and in the industry to start thinking, okay, yes, we also have to focus on content measurement. And so it's really just about that education process that we're embarking on right now, and have had, the vendor community has been very receptive. Really, we're just partners in all of it, which is really gratifying. I mean, it's still a lot of work, but it's exactly the work that we want to be doing. And hopefully we're going to make this deck available to SIM members. And I think part of what we were hoping to come out of our working group is to be able to, we don't expect you to have memorized the slides from before, but we wanted you to hear from us that this is something that all of the major companies need. This isn't a custom ask of NBCU or a custom ask of Paramount. And I think, unfortunately, what maybe has happened up until this point is that we've had a lot of separate conversations. And even though we're actually all saying the same thing, it may have sounded different. And so we hope that this actually really streamlines for a lot of different purposes. One of these is priorities. And as Colleen was saying, there's been a lot of focus on ad solutions. I would hope that this is opening the door to a conversation about where this could fit in conjunction with some of those ad solutions. I'm a big one with analogies, and I like house analogies in particular. But if we build a foundation that's only built to support, a first floor of advertising, it would be very expensive to then try and go add a second floor for content measurement. So if we could be thinking about this more holistically, even if that has to follow, we don't want to have two different sets of solutions. I don't think we can afford two different sets of solutions. But also, again, to the consumer, this starts with content and then ends with ads. And so we don't want them to be disconnected. So I hope we're helping with awareness today, and at least if nothing else.
And just briefly, because these kinds of challenges, which do make the kind of content measurement challenges difficult to solve, we can deal with some of this, can't we, with a coordinated effort? And we'll talk a bit more about that. If these are the current problems, how do you help your stakeholders answer some of the use case questions at the moment? If you don't have what you're looking for, what are you using to try and answer these?
We're putting everything through the paces, right? We're doing a lot of proofs of concept and case studies and experiments. We are marketers too. And so we're basically making sure that we're walking the walk and not just acting, strictly as a publisher and only participating in the ad measurement aspect of things. I also just wanted to call out the costs column on the far right. One of the things that we also are working closely with everybody on is making sure that all audiences are measured, right? We want to make sure that kids are measured. We want to make sure that African Americans are measured. We want to make sure that over-the-air audiences are measured, and that it's complete, that it's representative, and that all of it is actually getting captured. So that's also where some cost comes in and some extra effort. I think we also have to do a bit of hand-holding internally, because there are different data sources that are better suited to certain business questions. And so I think there has been a comfort level that there's just one place to go for this. And the reality is there needs to be multiple places. I think the idea that any one company could handle and measure and accurately help us with that long, long list, which, by the way, is a subset of all the questions, is probably not realistic. And so I think we really have tried internally to figure out there are different sources that may help us. 6 months or so ago, my colleague Brian West was here, sharing some of the work that we did with VideoAmp in terms of marketing and effectiveness and tune-in, et cetera. And so, for that business question, that was actually something we were able to use to help give us insight. I hope that becomes the foundation for expanding out what that capability can be, just as one example.
Okay, let's talk data, which is good because we have a slide on data challenges. It's almost like we planned this. So one of the big challenges, particularly in the content measurement space, of course, is the uneven availability of the kind of data that's required to provide granular measurement. And there are lots of kind of root causes of that. Give us a sense of some of the data challenges that you think about, which are things we should be focusing on trying to solve.
Well, even just starting with metadata, right? It would be a lot easier if we could just get everybody to ingest from maybe one place where we're putting all of our titling information and trackage information.
because we're updating it all the time. There's news that happens, and so you have to kind of scrap your schedule and you change things, and sports overruns. Like, you're kind of constantly optimizing your schedule, your linear schedule. And so I think that when it comes to being able to measure that, we want to make sure that we're not doing it 5 times for 5 different vendors. And so just the availability of the metadata to all of the players in the ecosystem is a challenge.
Lisa?
Well, first of all, I 100% agree with that. But no, I think there's some of the other challenges on here just to kind of keep going, right? This idea of integrating linear and streaming. From a consumer perspective, these are not 2 different things. They don't go around thinking about this in sort of 2 different buckets. But the way that measurement has existed up until this point has been very separate. Even with Nielsen as sort of a legacy system, streaming and linear are reported separately, and they're reported in different metrics. And clients have to do a lot of work to sort of equivalize that and trying to put that into the narrative. So, I mean, they have both sides and it's not put together. With other vendors, we're trying to get, if they have one side, they can do the other. We really do have to understand this connection because, as Brian spoke about earlier, that transition is happening, like it's happening at a fast speed. And actually, to build off fast, I feel like every day there's a fast channel or 10 popping up. And so measurement has always trailed something happens and then the measurement of it sort of comes after. But this rate of change is now so fast that we have got to get better at sort of staying ahead. And I think also fast channels are not that different than linear channels. They're just coming through a digital pipe. So let's not have to reinvent all measurement just because it's slightly different than something we already had. But a lot of this stuff, it seems very unsexy, metadata, titles, et cetera. But it is the thing that actually, if we could clear that clog in the drain, things would flow.
Totally. I call it plumbing and electrical. Like, everybody takes it for granted until it breaks, and then all hell breaks loose. And I just wanted to ladder on what you were saying about fast. I mean, there are shows and seasons and seasons of shows in a couple of different places. And so audio signature libraries unto themselves are not getting it done because they can't tell the difference between if it's on this platform or that platform. And that's also has to get solved for the whole ecosystem.
And for us to be able to optimize as much as possible monetization, because the monetization in those different windows is different.
So the interesting thing about our community is that it embraces both the very young and the very experienced. And I do as I head rapidly into the slightly more experienced camp, I'm keen to make sure we emphasize that. But interestingly, though, some of these challenges are not that new, are they? And I thought you're right. Brian touched upon some of this earlier, that we have created a very complex marketplace. It's complex, filled with large businesses and small, very diverse. And there's a certain inertia associated with complexity. And we've had efforts in the past to bring the industry together and collaborate, and they've not always been successful. I mean, demonstrably, because we're still here talking about some of the same problems, e.g. content metadata, that I remember talking about 30 years ago. How do we collaborate more effectively? Why do these kind of initiatives sometimes run aground at the fact that everyone's got a day job and nobody wants to change what they're doing, and it works and we're just going to keep on doing it until we have a good reason to? And yeah, I get that it would be great if we all did the same thing, but that's not going to happen, so never mind. Do you know what I mean? There's that kind of...
I have a couple of things on that. One is that nobody wants to do a bad job, right? And if you're not figuring out how to work with and think through and translate what these new data sets and the opportunities that come along with them bring, then you're doing a bad job, and nobody wants to do a bad job. I also think that consumer behavior and just the overall re-platforming of TV is just this total forcing function on all of it. And that hasn't existed as powerfully and with as much velocity as it does now.
It's a moment of change, so we can make this stuff happen. Lisa?
I would say that I'm encouraged that there is more of this collaboration happening on the ad side. I want the content part of that to be brought into the equation, but I think it's a bit of a different dynamic on the ad side. I think there is a bit more natural competitiveness to that, and maybe a desire to differentiate a little bit. I think on our side, we sell content to each other. We are aligned in wanting to understand what the marketplace looks like, and be able to optimize that. So my hope is that on this piece of it, I think there's more alike than there is differences. We're just trying to message to our community here that is the case. And so hopefully that can speed up some of the engagement we can have from this point forward.
Which brings us seamlessly on to next steps, of which we have a couple identified. Good news. So, Lisa, next steps. What are we going to do about all of this?
Sure. So, I mean, the idea of the content working group was really to sort of get to being able to share this out, but then lead to engagement. So if you are a research vendor in the audience, I would just really encourage that if any of this was new to you, if you don't fully understand it in this 20-minute or 20-minute section, that's fine. But please, seek to understand it, seek to ask questions. I think we'll be setting up some follow-up sessions, and then evangelize that within your companies about what this need is, and the fact that it is a common shared need, I think, is one of the pieces. And then as you understand what that is, and you think about what your capabilities are, come back to SIM and tell us what might be some places. Let's start somewhere. Don't try to boil the ocean and solve the entire thing. But where could you start? Where could your company sort of help with some of those use cases?
Colleen?
Agree. I don't think that the vendor community could be luckier to have. There's luckier to have such an open-minded, open arms SIM community, and really the whole industry right now is. I've never seen this much. Just like I said, open-mindedness to wanting to work with new data sets and see how they can do a better. I mean, that's the name of the game. You just want to do a good job. If you're an agency executive, you want to do a good job for your marketing partner. If you're in marketing at a major advertiser, you want to do a great job of selling that car or opening that movie or whatever it is.
So that's amazing, and we really appreciate the kind words. Just to be very practical and clear, we are planning to organize a bigger meeting for members of the content measurement and vendor community, along with some of the major studios, to talk through this work and to answer some questions. And then in time, we do plan to issue an RFI to the community, again, to ask for inputs and insights about how you can help address some of these business case, use case questions, because it's incredibly important. My time spent working with this group has been quite inspirational from that point of view. So a massive thank you to Lisa and Colleen.